Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with a conclusive ending. Because this week we watched Torchwood, Children of Earth, Day 5,
Written by Russell T. Davies.
directed by Euros Lynn.
And aired on July 10th, 2009.
I don't think I said, Torchwood, Children of Earth, the past 4 weeks of us doing this season, so I guess for all the people out there who like uniformity, sorry, I guess.
Well, it's fitting now that we've truly become the Torchwood, Children of Earth, Day 5.
That's the only joke that The Simpsons has ever made that I actually laughed at. Was that The Simpsons or was that Family Guy?
I think it was Family Guy.
Whichever one of the two shows it was. See, I can't even remember which show it was. But anyway, whichever of the two shows it was like the only joke on that show that I actually laughed at. Which is, if you don't know, it's the dad, I guess Peter, I guess we're going with Family Guy. Peter goes to see a movie, and it's Superman 4, and in the movie he goes, "Now I am become Superman 4, the quest for peace." And Peter just goes, "So that's why it's called Superman 4, the quest for peace."
Yeah. There are other fun... Family Guy has its moments. It's a pretty bad show, but it has its moments. Like the time...
Yeah, I guess the other funny joke was the one where, I think you're going to reference the same scene where, Stewie just has a gun and he's like, "Get back in the time machine! Get back in the freaking time machine!"
No, that's a good one, too. But I was going to talk about the one where, Peter is saying something and he gets interrupted mid-sentence by, this chicken that he has this sort of feud with. And he fights the chicken for, 5 minutes, and then he comes back and he just restarts the sentence and without, trailing back or going back at all, and you're just totally lost as to what he's saying because of the 5-minute interlude. It was pretty funny.
Wow.
Kind of like the resolution to Torchwood, Children of Earth. Pretty funny.
What? Let me just say that Keon speaks for himself and not for everybody on the podcast.
Yeah. What is it? All opinions are my own?
Yeah.
Well, not me. All my opinions are plagiarized.
Yeah, but plagiarized from you 30 years in the past. Self-plagiarism.
Before I was born.
Wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff. Look, don't think about it too hard.
Now that's a thought that was truly plagiarized from me. Just saying something outlandish and nonsensical and then writing it off with, "Look, don't dive too deep into this." Just...
It's like when I watch a movie and I'm like, that movie wasn't really good because XYZ, and someone just goes, "Don't think about it. It's good if you don't think about it." And I'm like, but that's not how I like to watch movies, so I didn't find it good. And, yeah. If your only defense of a movie is just don't think too hard about it, then,
yeah,
I don't know.
I agree with that. When people go it's a real turn your brain off kind of movie, it's just probably a waste of time then.
As if watching Jack kill his own grandson isn't a waste of time. No.
No, this episode, out of all the Children of Earth episodes, I think was the most interesting because it was I don't know, it wasn't I wouldn't call it an unconventional ending, but it was not the direction I thought it was going to go, and I find the direction it actually went fascinating, both in its own right and because it was pretty unexpected, in my opinion.
Look, someone needed to be there to just hit you with the depression at the end of the line.
Yeah, it's to make a probably inept analogy here, this episode was kind of how they have this out in the desert here, and they probably have this elsewhere too, but those dirt roads that like divert from highways that are the purpose of them is to like if big rig trucks, like if the brakes go out, they just like go onto those paths and just wait until the truck stops. Like this is
Yeah.
like one of those dirt road diversions that's like it's a good thing, but it is a diversion. You know, it's not. It's kind of not where you thought it was going. It ultimately like it's for good. I don't know.
Ultimately, you're left wondering how there can be a season 4.
Yeah,
Because Jack's off-world. I mean, chronologically, the next time we see Jack, I believe, is in Doctor Who when the 10th Doctor's saying goodbye to all his old companions and visiting them all while he dies, and we see him in that bar, and he's like, yo, what's up? It's me, Jack. He doesn't actually say that. It's editorialization.
yeah. I mean, really, where do they go from here? It seems to be done.
We do know that the Prime Minister just gets, I guess, just screwed.
Yeah, by his opportunistic like cabinet member.
Yeah, by fucking Diane or Diana.
Is
Whatever her
Deborah, I
name was.
believe?
Deborah.
Yes, Deborah. No, wait. Oh my god. So it's
No, I thought Deborah was the one who played
yes,
it.
it's
Denise.
Denise Riley, played by Deborah
Findlay.
Finlay. Yes. Wow.
Yeah, Denise. Just like, wow.
Just starting all this
Wow.
and then okay, we'll get there.
It's yeah, we'll get there, but it's bold of her to think that she's not going down too, considering they have footage of her proposing the goddamn inoculation plan.
Unless the contacts like overwrite the footage, you know. Maybe that's the case. Maybe
No, because Reese had a copy of the footage on his laptop
yeah.
when he vanished from the last episode, remember?
Yeah, true. You think if you're online, like the government would just be able to shut you down, like I don't know. You think if you're just some dude using like park Wi-Fi in the park, sitting on a bench with your laptop, that you? Okay. Anyway,
The government has bigger things on their plate this week.
right, because this episode starts pretty much right where the last one left off. But
Yeah.
not before.
I mean, obviously, like that's been the thing for the whole season.
There's sort of a cold open here, not exactly, but it's sort of a flash forward to Gwen recording this message about how she understands why the doctor sometimes doesn't show up, because Jack had, previously told her how the doctor always saves the day except when he doesn't / she doesn't.
Yeah.
And Gwen now says that she understands why, and it's because she thinks the doctor sometimes just looks at Earth and is disgusted and disappointed, which is true. I don't remember the exact quotes now or the exact circumstance, but I seem to remember a few incarnations of the Doctor at least being like, Earth is great, but man, those humans.
The third Doctor especially being like, I'm stuck here with you fools, like for real. Mm-hmm. Just like, yeah, a lot of Doctors did that, but I found it interesting that Russell T brought that into Torchwood in such not in a what's the word I'm looking for? Like the opposite of oblique, obvious, straightforward fashion.
What do you mean? Directly referencing it?
Because, directly. There we go. That was the word I'm looking for. So directly, because we had only seen beforehand, offhand references to Jack wanting to get back to the Doctor and getting back to the Doctor after season 1. So to start off, right off with Gwen going, I always wanted to ask about the Doctor, but now I understand why he sometimes doesn't save us. It's because he must look at us in shame.
Yeah, this episode actually has a lot of that where it's like, you kind of just have to assume that Gwen heard more about the Doctor off screen, and it's like later on when Gwen is talking to Ianto's sister and she goes, yeah, he told me all about you and his family and stuff, and it's like Ianto has literally never told Gwen anything about his sister on screen. So you kind of just have to fill in the blanks there, I guess.
Yeah, I almost, like, in that scene, almost thought she was lying to make Rhiannon feel better. Like, that's how I interpreted that, because we had never seen on screen Ianto talk about his family at all. You know, it is kind of Russell T trying to give Ianto character after his death. Like, oh yeah, remember all those times that, like, Ianto told us about his family? Haha, yeah, what a guy.
Yeah, or like, remember all those times when, you know, the narrative at hand really made you feel for Ianto? And I was like, no, I really don't. Maybe his
the
flashback
show just gaslighting us into.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if just all of season 4 is just them going, hey, remember that time Ianto did that super cool thing? And just the audience going, wait, what? Am I misremembering?
Family Guy. Is Family Guy like the true master of gaslighting its audience? Like, hey, remember that time when cut to something that's like literally never been seen before and has nothing to do with the story at hand? Guess we've cracked the code, the Torchwood code. Torchwood is the Family Guy of Doctor Who.
Wait, what? This is when everybody makes those tweets that are like, what are the opinions that'll get you kicked out of fandom? Just respond with Torchwood is the Family Guy of Doctor Who. Jeez.
Anyway, the government announces its plan. They're going ahead with the whole kids go back to school thing. Hits, again, like we were talking about last week, hits really close to home in Anno Domini 2021.
Thank you for specifying the year. I really appreciate that you did that.
Just making sure people don't think I'm talking about 2021 BC. You know? Or, sorry, BCE and CE. Which, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, you know, is the proper way to reference it, even though it's
still in reference to the birth of Christ.
Yeah, exactly. It just obfuscates it more.
We should start, like. This is really dumb. Referencing years like in the year of the podcast 7.
Oh my God. Yeah. TYD 7.
TYD 7 and then before TYD like 20 or something.
Yeah. And the year starts on like January 14th or whenever their first episode went out.
Yeah, I mean, in that scheme, it would be TYD 7. Like day 6, I guess, or day 9 when we're recording this. Great.
Did we really put out our first episode on the 14th? I just guessed.
No, I think it is actually the 14th.
Uh-huh.
But you know what? I can find out. Yeah, first episode. Actually, no, we would be TYD 6 day 364 today. It's the first episode of Trust Your Doctor was published on the 24th of January. 2014.
Yeah, a lifetime ago.
Wow, that means that our episode on day 4 went out right on our 7-year anniversary. Bang on.
Yeah, I mean...
Day of.
Yeah.
Huh. We also released that episode late, if I remember correctly. Because the next episode was only released 4 days later. I think we wanted to release it on the 21st, but the website wasn't set up, if I remember correctly. Just really digging deep into that Trust Your Doctor lore for a second here.
Yeah, I think we put that one out on like a Wednesday, and then we started doing them on Sunday after that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I guess it is there.
Yeah.
It's elsewhere from where we want to be right now, which is discussing Children of Earth, Day 5. So, I mean, yeah, just kind of like I was saying, this entire story in a way, and particularly this part about like, you know, opening up the schools again, it has a different feel to it now that 2020 has happened.
Yeah, I had that same feeling, especially because the government, and by the government I mean Prime Minister Green, is like, look, you need to trust us. This inoculation is going to be perfectly fine. Like, we can't give you any details about it, but it's going to be perfectly fine, and we're just asking for a little trust from you guys.
Right. Which obviously goes horribly wrong.
Immediately.
Yeah.
They dispatch the army, so they have a list of, I didn't write down the exact number, it was 6,600 schools, I think, that they're going to pull the kids from to give to the 456, and they dispatch the army to all of those schools with transportation to prepare. At midday, I believe, is when they're going to take the kids from school.
Right. As all this is going on, I believe Jack and Gwen are confronted by Frobisher. I think that's now.
Yes, it's in like some sort of, I don't actually know what building this was that they were in.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was still the MI5 building that was flooded with the gas. But maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. There's a lot of people in the room, so it seemed like some sort of staging point.
Regardless, Frobisher comes, he sits down with them, and wow, yeah, what did they talk about here? Oh my god, I completely forgot. I think Gwen sort of threatens Frobisher, telling him that they have the footage and all of that, and he just goes like, "Well, what's the point?"
Yeah, I have. What he says. He says civilization. Sorry. He says civilization's about to fall into hell. You want to start that descent a little earlier? Go ahead.
Right.
We also actually, before that meeting, though, discover what the aliens want the kids for, which is the first indication that this episode is about to go down a real dark path that Doctor Who has never done before. Because we see General... Shoot, what's his name? The unit general.
Aduya, I think.
Aduya, yeah. Goes into Thames' house. Because he basically takes over communication responsibilities with the 456 from Frobisher, and he goes and basically says, like, I have kids, you know, and if my kids get chosen, I want to know what they're being chosen for. So what do you use the kids for? Like, do you need them to survive? Because we saw you hooked up to them. And they're like, no, we use them for the hit. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, they're basically drugs. They produce a chemical that makes us feel good, and that's it. That's what we use them for. And it's like, oh, boy.
Yeah, I completely didn't see this coming. This was probably that first sort of diversion from where I was almost sure that this was going to go. I sincerely didn't think they were going to reveal what the 456 wanted the kids for.
Mm-hmm.
You actually touched on this in our latest post on the site, on our blog, of like, you know, the 456 stuff and the sci-fi and supernatural stuff in this story is more so in the periphery than it really is.
Yeah.
It's more about like the reaction to the 456 arrival. So I seriously thought they weren't going to reveal why, because it almost doesn't matter. But then they and in a way, like, this reveal almost says it doesn't matter because it's something so petty. So it still has that.
Yeah,
feel.
it's also delivered in the most like understated way. It's not a big reveal. It's just the general's like, I have a kid, I want to know what they're used for, and they're just like, all right, yeah, we use them for drugs. And I guess if it's understated because we don't see like a lot of, we see the prime minister being like, they're using them for drugs, and that's really the only reaction to it we get this episode, because there's so much else going on in this episode that, yeah, it really is like just kind of a side effect or a side plot almost.
Yeah, it's not even like our many of our race have become addicted to, the children, and getting the hit off the 12 children that we abducted way back when. But no, it's just like, yeah, it's just stated straight up.
Mm-hmm. Classic.
Well, in a way, not, right? Because like, I don't know. It was kind of a departure, I think, from really anything Doctor Who and Doctor Who adjacent has sort of done, where yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's well, let's just say it's unlike anything Doctor Who adjacent that we've seen. You know, from what I've heard, the like prose story "Who Killed Kennedy" or whatever it's called, it gets like real dark,
Hmm.
like uncharacteristically so. But yeah, you're right. It is, I guess, not classic. It's in fact the exact opposite of that. I would be hard pressed to find anything in this episode that's been done before in Doctor Who specifically. Although I think the wiki mentions that this isn't the first time Doctor Who's had sentient beings being turned into drugs, because the Nightmare of Eden dealt with a similar topic, although the drugs are harvested from the corpse of mandrills.
Oh yeah, yeah. Nightmare of Eden. Yeah. Wow. I completely forgot about that episode. Story rather. Those multiple episodes.
Yeah, it was a serial.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, this came as such a surprise to me that like I couldn't even understand what the 456 was saying, and I had to turn on subtitles because I kept hearing. Okay, this is gonna sound stupid, but I kept hearing candy corn when he said chemicals. He was saying chemicals or it or and I
Candy
kept hearing
corn.
candy corn.
Candy corn's kind of a drug. You know, the kids are all like, "You're doing that candy corn."
Yeah, just smoking candy corn.
Um, Prime Minister Green's like, "Wow, what the hell?" And then the American general's like, "Well, you opened the door. You gave them the first hit 40 years ago." And I just have a comment here that's like, just par for the course. Leave it to Britain to be the ones who start the drug trade. If you know what I'm referring to, yikes.
Yeah, like the opium stuff. Is that
Yeah, the opium crisis, let's call
yeah?
it.
All right.
Leave it to the British to be the ones who start a drug crisis. So that's then we go to the scene we were talking about earlier, where we're talking with Frobisher, and Jack basically begs with Frobisher to take Gwen home and not to arrest her, and he asks what's going to happen to his daughter and grandson, and Frobisher says they'll be free to go.
Right. So Gwen leaves. She gets on a helicopter at the most clear heliport you've ever seen because it says London right on the heliport, and it's just like if you got close enough in an aircraft to like see that thing, like, and you didn't already know you were in London, like, just what are you doing? You know, like. But yeah, Gwen goes home. She goes back to Wales, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And Frobisher then meets with Prime Minister Green. I believe is what happens next. He goes in. Green is doing some paperwork, and
Right.
Green tells him that his kids are going to be sacrificed to sort of appease the people and show them that, you know, this process they're telling people is random also includes government officials.
Mm-hmm.
And Frobisher's like, "Wait, what?" Green's just like, "Yeah, you heard me. I'm busy. Just buzz off," type thing.
Yeah.
Frobisher sort of snaps at him and starts yelling, but Green's not perturbed at all. He just kind of responds flatly that there's really nothing Frobisher can do about it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we knew from day 2 that Frobisher was basically a fall guy.
Right. And it wasn't, you know, I think clear until now what angle this story was coming at this sort of middle manager type character from. I don't know if that was grammatically correct or not, but yeah, whatever. But in this episode, this finale, I guess, kind of makes it obvious, which I kind of want to touch on later because I think it's more relevant when what's her name makes her little speech to Lois.
Mm-hmm.
Bridget, that was her name. It was Bridget. Yeah.
Yeah, Bridget makes a little speech and then apparently has a much longer conversation that we don't get to see. Curses.
I need to see snippets
Until
of
later.
it, I guess. And I mean, yeah, Susan Brown, I'm just looking at the cast list. She was kind of, or we had no idea, or I had no idea that like she delivers some pretty good acting in this episode. And it's just like, wow, she understated this character for so long. I guess probably just waiting for this moment.
Yeah, I mean not they. She's the one really carrying the episode near the end. She's the one delivering the performance that brings it all home together after the 4, 5, 6 are gone. Which is, I mean, great in my opinion. She delivers a great performance. Have we looked her up for Britain's 10 actors yet?
I don't know, but I have her pulled up now, so we can probably do that at the end. I just want to see.
Yeah, why not? May as well give her time.
And if we've already done it, I guess we
In the
just
sun.
cut it out. Yeah, she has been in a lot of Doctor Who audio stuff, looks like. So.
Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, after Frobisher lets Gwen go, she calls up PC Andy. And before we go any further, let's get the Amazon X-Ray fun fact of the week. Peter Capaldi's grandfather was Italian. That's it. That's the only fun fact Amazon had this week. I guess the episode was just too depressing.
You could probably guess that from his last name. It's not something that I had thought about, but it's like, now that I know, it's like, okay, yeah, Capaldi, all right, Italian.
Yeah, I think all his other ancestors, so his other grandparents are all Irish or Scottish. So I think that's what the fun fact also said.
Huh. Well, cool, I guess.
So Frobisher then asks for a requisition 31. Requisition 31, I think.
Yeah, it was 31. I wrote it down
From
for some
Bridget.
reason.
And she's like, but why? And he's like, just requisition 31, please, Bridget. So she goes to get one for him. And she gives it to him, and we see him go home. At midday, the news crews are basically going to see them take Frobisher's kids as well to show, I guess, government faith in the inoculation program. And Frobisher sends them to their room, and then he takes the gun and goes into the room and closes the door, and then you hear 5 gunshots.
Right. Or 4?
You hear 4 and then a
guess.
5th one after, which you would assume that he would only shoot everyone once, but I guess he had to shoot someone twice. Because I counted. It was definitely 4.
I thought it was
and
just
then
4.
The 5th one slightly after.
Yeah, I thought it was 3 and then a 4th one, but yeah, I guess. Weird. And he does it, I mean, there's, how do I say, there's like, you don't even hear them scream, like he just does it really fast.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's sort of how he ends. And there's a lot more to this scene that I want to touch on, but just to keep things moving, I guess we'll talk about it at the end. Because this is one of the most interesting scenes in the episode, I think. But yeah, after that, Gwen gets back. She's driving with PC Andy, and he wants to know what's going on. But she's not telling him, and just to keep him safe and sane, I guess.
Well, she says something like, right now I need you to drive this car, Andy, and if I tell you what's going on, and she doesn't finish her sentence, but the implication is that if she tells him what's going on, he won't continue to drive the car. That he'll stop. They're driving to Ianto's sister's house, Rhiannon.
Right. This is also one of the most interesting scenes to me. The one, because Gwen implies that she doesn't want to keep the kid.
Yeah.
Her kid, her and Reese's kid. And Reese is just like, what? Like, what the hell, Gwen? And she's like, she just turns back to him and goes like, look at this mess. Like, is this the world that you want to have a kid in? And that was just like a whoa moment. That seems, I mean, I don't really have too much to say about that. But it just seems like, sort of a culminating moment for this entire, I mean, the whole thing, we've talked about this before, is called Children of Earth.
Yep.
It just seemed, so this scene, I don't know, there's probably more to dig into with this scene, which might be saved for now that we have a blog. Maybe something will show up about it there if I decide to write something about it. But like, yeah, it just seems like this sort of culminating moment of like, yeah, Children of Earth is
Children of Earth, but not of Gwen.
now we are become the Children of Earth.
Who watches the Watchmen? Who are the children of the children? I don't know.
Maybe it's like, this episode, I can't help but think of Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like the aliens come and they are taking, I don't remember if they're taking people. They're definitely like transitioning people into this like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, like this other plane of existence.
Right.
Whereas in this episode, you think, it's maybe you think that something like that's going on, or that the 456's aims are supernatural in some way. In this episode, they're not. You just find out they're straight up not. They have a very human desire, and maybe it's just sort of painting this. Maybe it's bleak because I'm just coming up with this right now, so I don't know. Maybe it's bleak because like, you think of this whole entire vast cosmos, and the people out there, the other species and alien races and such are, they're just like humans. They're not like the ones from Childhood's End that like have access to this sort of greater level of existence. They're just, they're just here to get high off children. And it just feels so, just kind of makes you feel, I don't know, bleak. And I guess you can't feel bleak, but like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but it's just like, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Like, we expect aliens to be these higher evolved, let's say, or more developed beings. But in some stories, and in Children of Earth especially, it's revealed that they're still susceptible to, like, common vices. 4, 5, 6 are addicted to drugs. I mean, it's what it is. They're addicted to drugs, and they're willing to kill the entire population of the planet to do it. They're still susceptible to this very basic vice of biology, of society. They just now have better technology to go about doing it or achieving it.
Right. So maybe it's not like, again, in Childhood's End, like the humans, the people from Earth are the children, but maybe it's like Children of Earth is like, these are just the children of Earth. There are, other species out there who haven't really gone beyond really what we are. They're just not the children of Earth. They're the children of, whatever planet they're from. Mm-hmm. Type thing. Kind of a downer. Kind of like this whole episode was a downer.
Yeah, this episode just got like more and more depressing the longer it went on, because now we're at the point where like Rhiannon sends her son out to go get the kids in the neighborhood so that they can watch them at the house so they don't go to school, because Ianto told her not to send the kids to school. And then like Gwen and Andy show up, and she thinks they're there to shut down her little nursery school she's got going on, and then they're like, it's not about that. And then it just like hard cuts to her weeping in the closet, basically, or the storeroom.
This is the scene where Gwen either lies or indicates that there's more that we haven't seen off screen about like her and Ianto. And that was the thing too of like, we've talked about this before. I can't remember. I think it was between Gwen and Tosh, but it's like, if you think back, like what real interactions have Gwen and Ianto had beyond just like the dialogue the episode needed to propel itself forward, Like, was there any real heart-to-heart between Gwen and Ianto?
Yeah, Ianto was a lot closer with the other people on the Torchwood team. Perhaps because he was with them for longer, but still, yeah. I mean, I can't think of any scenes in which Gwen and Ianto had like a real heart to heart on screen anyway.
Yeah, I think Gwen is kind of the common denominator in these. Like, we couldn't think of one with Tosh beyond the one where she's told Tosh that, like, to back off with Owen. Can't really think of one with Ianto. At least not one that immediately springs to mind. And it's just like the only real interactions that I can think of that she's had are with Jack, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, huh. And we actually mentioned that, I think, in series 2, where it's like Gwen, she kind of took on this sort of, quote, boring main character, unquote, thing that a lot of shows have, or a lot of stories have. Where it's like she was kind of just on the periphery of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore, though.
Yeah. I mean, moving forward, presumably, like, she's going to have to be one of the main people in the Torchwood team, right? Assuming she comes back for the next season, which I assume she does.
Is dead.
Yeah, I mean, by default, sure, she wins. It's yeah, there's an interesting parallel between now that you're bringing this up, I'm just kind of working through this right now, that there's an interesting parallel between the end of this and the end of time. Where the Doctor banishes the Master of the Gallifrey and once again becomes the last of his race. In this episode, Gwen doesn't banish Jack, obviously, but he leaves of his own choice off-world, leaving Gwen to be the last of Torchwood.
Right.
So there's some interesting parallels there.
There's also some interesting parallels between this and Exit Wounds, or not Exit Wounds, the one right before that, where we find out about Jack's past, where it's like
Fragments?
Fragments, I think it was. Where it's like, the one guy killed all the Torchwood members and then killed himself, leaving Jack the only member of Torchwood, and he had to reassemble the team. And this one is Gwen is kind of in where Jack was there, where it's like Jack even says at the end of the episode, he's like, Owen, Tosh, Ianto, he even mentions Susie. He's like, I killed all of them. And whether, however much you want to put stock into how responsible he is for killing all of them, that's up to you, I guess. And, certainly to some extent he is. But he definitely sees himself as being responsible, and he bails. He doesn't kill himself, but he leaves at the end, kind of leaving Gwen where he was after having, I guess, killed the rest of them.
Yeah, kind of perpetuating the cycle, continuing the cycle once again. Mm-hmm. So,
but we also find out a bit more about Ianto, about his sort of posturing, I guess, because Ianto had previously said that his dad was a master killer, but his sister reveals that he just worked at what was it? I wrote it down. Debenhams, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a department store.
Yeah, I think it is as well. So Ianto wasn't exactly telling the truth there, I guess.
Yikes. Yikes.
This does come across as kind of weird, though, because it was such a small point that his dad was a tailor, and his entire past, it's not as if he really seemed to posture that much or make up stuff about his past. We didn't really think that he had come from anything, I don't know, illustrious, or that he sort of had these achievements under his belt. And we, in fact, knew that he kind of didn't. Not that his dad being a master tailor is, indicative of his own personal achievements, but it's like, it was just such a small point that it came across as odd that not that he lied about it.
It's also such an inconsequential thing that he would lie about, like, being a master tailor, because it never really... It's one thing to, like, the world is ending and you are like, I'm an electrical engineer, I can rewire that bomb, and then just failing. It's like they never had need of an expert tailor to save the world.
Yeah, it was only used to buy Gwen's wedding dress.
Yeah.
Maybe
it
has some effects on Gwen then, too, because it's like, I don't know, for the audience it's not really a big thing. At least I didn't feel it was. But it's like maybe for Gwen it's like enlisted him to buy this dress because his dad was a master tailor, but now we find out that he's a lying piece of shit. I don't know.
Wow. Wow.
I don't know.
Wow. I don't know.
And it's
Yes.
like, I don't know, it just comes across, wouldn't say it falls completely flat, but it just feels, I don't know, there's just almost nothing to it because there's so many bigger fish they have to fry, like right now, like the soldiers who are about to storm into the house and take the kids, that it's just like, okay. Which, yeah, that's exactly what happens. The soldiers show up, and real quick, Reese and Gwen and the rest of the kids sort of file out the back, and they go and hide in this shed that's sort of a ways away.
Mm-hmm.
While Rhiannon's husband, whose name I constantly forget, decides to... Johnny. It's Johnny. Yes. Johnny decides to go get some of the rest of the parents from the neighborhood and tell the soldiers that they're not taking the kids, which fails miserably because they do take a lot of the kids.
Yeah, they're like, lol, no.
PC Andy also has his sort of moment here where he has to decide if he... Obviously, he's not a soldier, he's a cop, but he has to decide which side he's on, and he takes off his vest, and he takes off basically anything that would identify him visually as a police officer, and he starts attacking the army folks with the rest of them. The army folks, that makes it sound so quaint.
The army folk. Just make it sound very folksy and down to earth.
Real tame.
You're just some army
almost
folk.
As if they don't have like automatic weapons and riot shields and stuff like that.
And aren't just ripping kids from their homes.
There are some devastating scenes in this that we completely skipped over where you see the kids being bussed out of the schools, and it's the teachers and the parents kind of trying to stop that and just hysterically crying, but they can't. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and the reason why they're going door to door is because some of the kids didn't go to school, so they're only at 80% capacity, only at 80% of the number the 456 requested.
Right, and there's a scene where General Aduya asks the 456 if that's enough, and it goes, no. In that sort of voice.
It basically says all of them. It was at this point where I started to wonder, what are the other countries doing? Are they also going with this like inoculation story, or are they like do they have a different story for collecting all the kids? Like, what's happening? What's happening in like France across the English Channel? Because again, like I mentioned last week, this whole plan to pin it on the 456 like they were backstabbed hinges on every other one of the 192, I think it is, countries in the world. Like not just coming out and going on air and being like, look, we need to give 10% of the kids to the aliens or they'll kill us. Because one country does that, and the global news network will pick up on it, and this whole inoculation story is just blown to hell.
I mean, in a way, this episode is almost completely unconcerned with that. Like, talk about it being unconcerned with the supernatural and stuff and the origins of the 456 and all of that, which it is, but like it's even more unconcerned with like anything beyond Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it does sort of, I don't know, and I wouldn't know, I guess, directly comment on stuff that happens in, like, I don't know, because it is just completely focused on Britain and sort of the moral quandary that the British government finds itself in, and, the British people find themselves in, and that's obviously because it's a British show. They're not just going to set it somewhere else all of a sudden, but, it's interesting, I guess.
Well, you say that.
Why? What?
Season 4 is set in America.
Oh, Well, maybe that was an American co-production though, so I can kind of see why. And
I just found it funny that you were like, they wouldn't suddenly set it somewhere else when, like,
yeah,
it's exactly what they do.
yeah. Series 4 about to hit us like a concrete wall. Almost as good as that time when, when I was like, consequences can be rewritten as long as they're done well, like right before we started the Stephen Moffat era.
Ah, yes. I think you quickly came to regret that.
It was around series, I don't know, 6 where I realized what I had said, and I was like, oh my god.
It was like 2 seasons later, you were like, hang on, wait a minute.
Yeah. Anyway, Jack's daughter, whose name I also constantly forget, Alice. Yeah, Alice, was
yeah.
it? Yes.
Alice, it's
Yes.
Alice.
Alice is having this heart-to-heart with Johnson now that she and Steven are being freed. And she basically goes like, look, if you want to stop this thing, if you want to have any chance of like making this okay, you're going to need Jack. So they break Jack out of the holding cell that he's in.
But before they do that, Bridget has her conversation with Lois.
Right.
This happens concurrently with, and really well done concurrently with Frobisher taking the gun to his house and committing murder-suicide. Because it's the juxtaposition between that and Bridget being like, when he joined the government, like when he started 30 years ago, he was a good man.
Right,
kind of like bringing it all around. Everybody's been talking about how he's a good man, and her conversation here kind of brings it all around. Like, well, he was a good man when he started, but like the job takes its toll.
Yeah, and she does say that he probably will be forgotten in this whole incident, but she doesn't want him to be forgotten, and she wants him to be remembered as, a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, for me, what I was thinking about in this scene is like, he really wasn't, a good person. Maybe he was at the start, but like, he from what we've seen in this story, he's really not been a good man at all. So, I don't know.
But this conversation that Bridget has becomes retroactively important later on, we find out.
Yeah,
they break Jack out.
Yeah, they break Jack out.
You're gonna say it was important now?
I was gonna say it's important now. Like, even if regardless of anything that happens later, like I don't know, it seemed pretty important in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just mean like important to the actual plot of the story later on, less so than important to like thematically or for the audience's sake, which is what I think it is when it first shows up.
I knew what you meant, which is why I was just about ready to move on from it, but like, yeah. Yeah. So they bring Jack to this sort of warehouse that they're operating out of. A lot of people operating out of warehouses and random buildings in this 5-week/1 week experience, or this 1 week experience that we drew out to 5 weeks.
Yeah, and it was all the better for it.
Yeah, imagine having watched this all, like, imagine how much we would have to discuss. Like, this is, talk about this being the antithesis to anything we've seen on Doctor Who. My God, is this the antithesis to, like, the 6-part serial of classic Who? Where it's like, you can talk about one episode of this for multiple times as long as you can talk about an entire 6-part Doctor Who story from like this 4th Doctor era.
They just didn't know how to do it. They just didn't know how to do it back then.
And just the little behind the scenes that I know or that's been hinted of like the production team not thinking that this would really go over well or not even really considering this to be a big deal is just mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, you look at what Doctor Who has done in the past. Torchwood isn't Doctor Who, obviously, but like you look at what classic Who did in the past, and then you look at this, and they're just worlds apart, like quality wise, content wise, everything. And it's just like, how did you not know that this was going to be a hit type thing?
Yeah. I mean, this is the most watched season of this show.
And it's more and more cited, I think, as being one of the best things that, like, the whole Doctor Who universe, expanded universe, I kind of didn't want to use that term, but let's just say it, has ever provided.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that at the end, but I think I kind of agree with that.
I do too.
So, Jack, they also rescue or break out the scientist. So they're going to need someone who knows science.
Yeah, Decker. He has this very cold line. It's at the beginning of the episode, but, you know, I wanted to note it, where he goes, they ask him how he survived, and he says, I just stood back. It's how I've survived this long, or like, it's something along those lines, or like how I made it this far through life. Like I just stood back.
I mean, he has another cold line now because Jack's trying to reverse engineer the signal, and Decker's like, we've been trying to do that for 40 years, and we haven't gotten anything, and we hacked into Torchwood like 20 years ago, and you guys have nothing that can help you. But then Jack remembers that they killed Clement somehow, and they discover that that's a new frequency that they transmitted, but they need to transmit it to the 456 somehow. And basically Decker says, oh, you're going to need a kid. Oh, that kid's going to fry.
Right. He suggests using the same conduit that the 456 had been using to communicate, which is obviously the children. So they need to feed the signal, I guess, through Steven, because he's the only kid on hand, to the rest of the kids in the world, so that they can, you know, drive off the 456. Which Jack, you see, you know, Jack contemplating over whether or not to do this, and Alice is just like, oh my god, no. Like, Dad, no. No, you can't seriously be thinking. And then she just makes a mad dash for Steven, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, this is when you're like, oh, is the show really going to go there? Is it really going to have Jack kill his own grandson to beat the 456? And it does. It goes there.
Yeah, this is the point in the episode where I was glad we watched Revolution of the Daleks before this, because that would have just painted Jack's, like, humorous and, I don't know, upbeat sort of return in such a different light. Such a different light.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this next season is going to do something to rehabilitate his character somewhat, but I mean, you can see this is the most emotion Jack's ever shown, like, in making a decision to defeat an alien enemy in the entire show so far, I would argue.
Yeah, there's not even any question about that, really. I mean, it's just, especially at the end when you have that close-up on his face. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and he's just weeping while he does this.
Yep, but it works. We skip the entire scene where the soldiers find the shed that they're hiding the kids in, and they take a lot of the children, but that's exactly what happens, and they take the kids, but then Jack starts the signal, and they drive off the 456.
Right. It's a little unclear exactly what this does to drive them off, but they just kind of go, all right, it works.
Yeah, again, maybe just that's probably part of, like, this whole story's lack of concern with any of the sci-fi stuff, right? I just thought it was like the same thing they transmitted to Clement to kill him, and they were doing that to the 456, causing the 456 to retreat.
Right. And then I guess just stay away forever.
Yeah, their ambassador does explode, though. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
In a fiery blaze.
Yeah, and a bloody one, too. I mean, he just literally explodes, and there's just, like, tons of blood everywhere. Yeah, it would kind of suck if the 456 just came back with like a massive like combat force and we're just like, yeah, you want to try that stuff with us? Like, we're here now. The 456 do come back in an audio, I believe. I think I saw that mentioned somewhere.
Well, let's check the deepest
Yes.
hole to dive into in the universe.
They do. They come back in an audio known as The Death of Captain Jack.
Nice.
Or
I think
maybe-
I've read about that one.
Yeah, let's see. This might be a prequel or something.
I think it's an alternate universe. It's, if I remember correctly, the Death of Captain Jack is an audio that's an alternate timeline where John Hart basically John Hart goes back in time and uses the Torchwood arsenal of alien weapons to basically take over England, and then he siphons Jack's immortality to become immortal himself.
Yeah, just looking at the TARDIS wiki page, it seems like there's a lot of time jumping and different time periods. I would probably guess, I haven't listened to it obviously, but like I would guess that maybe the 456 are not a main part of that story, or not a big part of it.
Yeah, I don't think so, based on the plot synopsis I read once.
Yeah, but I guess this, yeah, it just works. The 456 don't come back. They just retreat. Maybe they're just scared off for good.
I mean, presumably until they develop a countermeasure to the transmission that Jack has created, they can't come back to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So
You see Jack looking extremely distraught. And then it cuts ahead to 6 months later.
yeah, 6 months later on a random hill outside of Cardiff, I guess.
Yeah, we forgot the scene, or I skipped just past the scene, I guess, where Bridget confronts Green. So the people in the Prime Minister's office or meeting room or whatever that is get the word that the 456 have left and that the ambassador is dead. And they're all just like, all right, good work, everyone.
Well, he also says it was really lucky that the general took over because they can just blame like the whole inoculation scheme on the Americans.
Yeah, and Bridget doesn't take this kindly. She goes like, lucky? Like, that's what you have to say after you basically put the people you are supposedly here to lead through. You just say it's lucky? And he's like, yeah, why not? Bridget says, I'll tell you why not, because I'm recording this. That's why not. Because it's okay to say such things in private, but not if it's going to endanger your political career.
Right.
Right, exactly. As in, yes, that is okay. No.
Denise is like, look, I guess I'm taking over now. And I'm just like, the hubris on this woman.
Yeah, she's just a massive opportunist here, where because she hasn't been recorded saying anything bad in this particular recording, she just uses this as leverage to basically end Green's political career. And, you know, it's implied that she's going to climb the ladder because of this.
Yeah, I mean, unless that other recording comes out that, like, reveals that she was just willing to sacrifice all the kids except her own. Like,
Yeah.
and, like, then goes on that, like, classist, subtly racist rant about how the people who don't contribute to society should be the ones we get rid of.
Yeah.
But you know what? If Anno Domini 2020 has taught us anything, no one gives a crap, so...
Yeah. I mean, look,
When the politicians do that is. Let's just...
Yeah, look, I mean, if OJ's murder of his wife taught us anything, yeah, you didn't think you'd be hearing about that in this episode, did you? Well, you were wrong.
I didn't think I would hear about that ever on Trust Your Doctor.
If that taught us anything, it's that you can literally do whatever you want as long as you're rich enough and powerful enough.
If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit.
then we cut ahead 6 months to this random freezing hill that Jack has told Gwen to meet him on.
And he's like, so I've been traveling the world to atone for my sins, but now I must leave this world and travel the galaxy to atone for the rest of them. Goodbye, Gwen. And Gwen's like, you can't do this. And he's like, oh, but I can.
And he leaves. And that's it. That's yep. Torchwood. It could have just ended right there. But it didn't.
I mean, there's apparently, so the TARDIS wiki mentions this, and I think it's interesting. It mentions that apparently the final shot of the episode was going to be after this, was going to be a shot of a computer screen saying something like Torchwood status terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Because Torchwood as an entity doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But Russell T removed that because he didn't want people to think that Torchwood had been cancelled, even though he knew very well, apparently, that this probably, at the time, was going to be the last episode of Torchwood that was ever going to be made.
Yeah, but it's almost like Dylan and I were talking about this at the beginning. You know, people who make money publishing original, you know, fiction online and stuff week by week or day by day or whatever. Which, if you look into that whole scene, it's a lot of crap. I'll just say it outright.
A lot of erotica too.
Yeah, a lot of erotica. It's almost like that. In a way, TV making has that sort of same quality to it, where it's like you want to keep things open, just even if there is an ending as seemingly definitive as this. It's almost like you can't close it, even if you want to. You always have to keep the book open, at least slightly, for more possibilities in the future.
Right. I mean, sometimes, though, you end up with something like Orphan Black, which is great. I love Orphan Black. I think it's one of the best TV shows on television. But very clearly, the finale to season 3, 4, and 5 were all potential series finales that then the show got renewed again. Not at the end of series 5, it actually ended. But series 3 and 4, it has endings that are very clearly this could be the end of the show if the show ended. And then it got renewed again. And, after that happening so many times, you're like, oh my God, just commit.
Yeah, a lot of modern, pop culture-esque media has that quality to it, where it's like, if this makes enough, because stuff like this makes so much money and is designed to and does, it's just if it does well, you can't end it.
Yeah, even though you want to.
Right.
That's not even new. Look back at Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle was like, God, I only make money from Sherlock Holmes, but I hate it. So he kills him off. And then a couple years later, he's like, damn it, I'm not making money on anything else. I'm forced to bring back this character that I've grown to hate writing for.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to because I need the money.
Yeah. We'll have to see if Torchwood goes for anything meta with that. Maybe the next season will take a drastically different approach or have a different, feeling to it.
That would be amazing.
I think it will, honestly, just because it's, it's a co-production with Stars and all of that, so.
Yeah, it's an American co-production. It's going to be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how that changes the show.
Yeah, it doesn't get renewed after season 4, so maybe it's this next season that kind of runs it into the ground.
Or maybe just nobody wanted to make it. It only becomes a co-production, as far as I'm aware, because the BBC didn't want to fund another season alone. They didn't think it would be a surefire thing, so for Stars to come in and offer to put up some of the money in order to make the show as a co-production probably saved it. And then they probably didn't want to do that for another season.
Mm-hmm. And that probably has something to do with how successful this season was, that is, Children of Earth.
Yeah.
Just because, when you have something like this that, people started petitions to save, like, people were invested in this. People started petitions to get the BBC to revive Eon. People love this story still to this day. So, maybe Stars and the BBC saw that and were like, okay, like, or Stars, I guess, rather, saw that and was like, okay, we need to do this again. We need to replicate Children of Earth. But there is no replicating Children of Earth.
It does take them another 2 years before that season comes out. So it takes them a while to get back on the train.
Yeah, maybe that has something to do with it too. Maybe like by 2011, people were over Torchwood. Who knows?
I mean, season 4 is still, if I remember correctly from the viewership statistics that I was looking at the beginning of our season on Children of the Earth, that season 4 is still like pretty well watched. Like, it's pretty close to Children of Earth and somewhere between series 2 and Children of Earth in terms of viewership numbers. So it's still like pretty well watched.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think, part of it too is at some point you just run out of ideas and concepts to do. And like, as we were talking about with the, you keep making endings that could be like the ending of the show, because that was what they did at the end of series 2. I mean, we talked about this, that the end of series 2 kind of felt like it could be the end of the show as well. Like, you eventually get to the point where you've done that so much that you don't like have any more endings to give.
Yeah, something that John Barrowman has talked about that I kind of have, I didn't really, I don't know if he said any more than this about the subject, but like, one thing that I saw online that John Barrowman had said about Torchwood as a whole was that he and the rest of the team, cast and crew, constantly had to prove themselves. Because every season, Torchwood moved to a new station. Because at first it was on, what was it, BBC 3, I think? And then Series 2 was BBC 2, and then finally Children of Earth, I believe, was BBC 1. Where it's like, and he felt that even though each season did well and was, they were given a new season, and people enjoyed the show and, had great critical and commercial response, I guess, he just felt that they were given the short end of the stick by the BBC every time, where it's like they were given bad time slots, or they were, not given enough of, I guess, what he thought they had to be given to work with. And he felt that they had to prove themselves time and time again, when I guess he also felt that they were proving themselves.
Right.
Which is weird, again, because, this season was, just a massive hit, I guess.
Yeah, but again, maybe Russell T was just like, well, we can't do Children of Earth again, like it was a very lightning in a bottle thing, which I think it is. It's a 5-episode story that takes place over 5 days and somehow executes in basically every episode on keeping the story moving and interesting without ever feeling like a lot of the plot or any of the plot is contrived in any way to fit.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doing it again, really. And, I mean, Miracle Day, I don't know too much about, but it almost, kind of has that feeling to it. So someone like me who hasn't watched it, or who knows bits and pieces, but not much, of like, kind of has that like, all right, let's do it again type thing to it.
Right. I mean, I know very little about the next season. I know that basically the synopsis or the idea behind it is that everybody stops dying on Earth and they got to figure out why. I don't think it takes place like over consecutive days like Children of Earth did. And but I do think it follows just that one story for the whole season.
Right, and it's 10 episodes, I think, so double.
Yeah,
what
10
this
episodes.
Was. Yeah, wow, we're almost done with Torchwood. Just 10 more weeks.
2 months, yeah. And then on to who knows? Who knows? Probably Sarah Jane Adventures.
Well, we'll have to get there when we get there, as the Fourth Doctor said, burn that bridge when we come to it. Because for now, I think there's some things that we both want to talk about here with this finale for Children of Earth.
The finale.
The finale.
The finale. The final nail.
Yeah, the final nail in the Torchwood coffin. Well, one thing I kind of wanted to touch on here that this episode does more so than any of the other ones yet, this had been something for the entire season, is that there's so many shots in Children of Earth, and I don't think that the other seasons of Torchwood did this, because I think I would have noticed it if they did, but I could be wrong about that. There are a lot of shots in this entire story, this entire 5-episode run, that like show you someone or something, usually someone, with something obfuscating them. So like for example, in this episode, this one does it really heavily. It's, in some scenes, it's like almost every other shot is like this, where like you see someone's face through railings, or like almost kind of obscured behind like a staircase banister or something, or like and it's very striking too in this episode in certain scenes where it's like Lois looking through that peephole thing, or when they're going to get Jack and the guy is like looking in on his cell and he kind of just pulls that the peephole thing, I don't know what you call it, thing down to make sure Jack is like doing okay, and you see him just kind of crouched over in the cell. It's just, I don't know what to say about it. I just wanted to point it out. And the scene where Frobisher kills himself and his family is like, that's almost taking that to the extreme, I think, because in that scene it's done more than ever. That's really the scene where it's like every other shot is sort of Frobisher's face, but it's like he's kind of like, I don't know what the term for it is, but the foreground is out of focus, and like you see that it's like some sort of banister, or, something obscuring his face. But then like the ultimate moment of that scene is like it's fully obscured. He goes into the room, you don't see him. All you do is hear the gunshots, and that's like, to me, the closing of the door was the ultimate like form of what we've been seeing, of like people obscured through whatever, but now it's just fully like opaque. Is like you can't see through the door at all.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know what to make of any of that, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cinematography for this season was definitely different than the other two seasons, and a step up, I think, in terms of quality. Less television, more movie-esque. So.
Yeah, less television, more traveling puppet show, so to speak. No, I'm just kidding. More 2006 YouTube, if you get what I mean. No, I'm just kidding. But no, this series it's something that like I haven't thought about as much as I have wanted to, probably, and like maybe we'll go into that on the blog or something later on. Of like, it's definitely doing some interesting things with the cinematography, like the shaky cam stuff that we mentioned in episode 4, which is like, that comes, I was kind of thinking about that in hindsight, and it's like, that comes at a moment, we were talking about how the shaky cam like feels wrong because it's done, it's integrated, it comes together, and it's like, it's shown to you with like all these quick cuts, and we're like, yeah, shaky cam plus quick cuts, that's wrong, like it shouldn't be like that. And but in a way that kind of mirrors the narrative too, where it's like, this is where you're learning that Jack is the one who gave the kids to the 456 in the 60s. And you're like, okay, like this is a scene where we're learning that a character who like this isn't Jack. Jack shouldn't be doing this, yet he is. And it's like, in a way, the cinematography almost mirrors that, where it's like the camera shouldn't be doing what it is.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces going into analyzing Jack's actions, Jack and Gwen's actions in this entire season, both in front of and behind the camera. I think, especially at the end too, when we see Jack leave, and there's like, I think, a very conscious decision being made, shooting this at night in an abandoned hill miles outside of town. Jack leaving basically after trying to cleanse his soul from what he's done. Also, like the final interaction we see between Jack and Alice is she sees him after coming through a door, and then her turning around and going back through the door and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just very effectively showing like the ostracization that Jack is feeling from everyone, and like Gwen being the only person begging him to stay. Because she was just as involved in this as he was, basically.
Yeah.
We forgot to mention too that Jack mentions like Owen, Tosh, and Susie when he says like they were all my fault, and you think he's just gonna say like Steven and Ianto, but then he goes on, he's like Owen, Tosh, Susie, they were all my fault.
Yep.
So very interesting. Very interesting. But I talked about a lot of the things I wanted to talk about during the episode, actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, as did I. Yeah.
So, guess we can go into our... we should do a retrospective for this season, I suppose. Looking back on it, since we're moving on. We're moving on. But I think we've talked about how... I mean, I think this is the best season of Torchwood so far. And like I said, well, I guess I did say I'd talk about this at the end. I do think this is one of the best things that the Doctor Who canon as a whole has put out into existence, that I've read or watched or listened to.
Yeah, I do as well. It just were you gonna continue on with that?
Nope.
No, yeah. So I do as well, and you know, it kind of speaks to this the belovedness of this season, like almost in a way speaks to like I don't know, maybe this says more about like Doctor Who fans, I guess, and Torchwood fans than Doctor Who or Torchwood themselves. But like, yeah, it kind of touches back on what we were talking about before, how this series is really not overly concerned with sci-fi stuff, and people liked that, and we both liked that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, maybe it just speaks to like, I don't know. There's like this sense too of like, especially when it comes to like science fiction and fantasy, where it's like there's a sense that those stories are, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but are merely quote unquote escapism or something like that.
Right.
And that's sort of like an opinion that, you know, most of the famous like writers, you know, Ursula K. Le Guin, whatever, through, you know, the past whatever how many years of, oh, she's dead, she died a couple years ago, have sort of like, I don't know, rallied against, although some embrace it, where it's like, I don't know, I don't know where I'm going with this actually, but like, yeah, it just speaks to like, yeah, go ahead.
Season 3 is completely different from the other two shows, but I also think it wouldn't exist. I mean, the other two seasons, but I also think it wouldn't exist without them. Like, you needed to establish the formula in order to break it.
Yeah, this wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't what Torchwood season 1 and 2 weren't. It's like the most confusing sentence, but yeah.
Yeah, and this touches on something we've talked about on the show before, like how you define something against what it's not. And like to an extent, Children of Earth is kind of like that, in that it's defined by being not as campy or not as serialized or not as self-contained as series 1 and 2. It intentionally tries to break all of those molds and succeeds. In my opinion, and that's really like what I have to say about it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember reading like some stuff from what's his name, Edward Said. God, what is his first name? It's Said. He's like I don't know what he is. He's sort of like a philosopher, writer guy. He wrote that book Orientalism, which I've read, not all of, I don't think. But and also the woman who wrote Beloved, whose name I forgot, also talks about this, of like this sort of, and it's like it's almost an imperialist like attitude, I guess. Although imperialist is kind of a loaded word, as much as I don't want to say that, it is. But like, yeah, this thing of like, yeah, this is, we're everything that, like, we X are everything that Y isn't type thing. oh god, what is her name? Toni Morrison. That's what it was. She related that in something she wrote that I read, and I can't remember what it is. She related that to like slavery. And one, it made sense what she was saying with like the American slave, like the white slave owners in America needed the slave to be everything that they weren't, I think is what she says, or like a reduction of what she says.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, that's interesting that like Torchwood does that too, where it's like series 3 needs series 1 and 2 to be everything that it's not.
Right.
I don't know. It's just, man, I don't know what to say. Maybe it's almost like Sinister. Maybe it does that. Maybe it does it like the expense of series 1 and 2, or maybe it's something like, the fact that like series 3 is so beloved is contingent on series 1 and 2 like not being all that, right? I mean, in a way, it's like this is above and beyond. Like this, like people like this and think it's good because series 1 and 2 are not as good.
Right. But I also think you could watch season 3, Children of Earth, in isolation from the other two.
I do too.
You could.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people have done that, and if they still think it's as good as it is, or as good as people who have watched season 1 and 2 before think it is.
You might even think it's better. I don't know, because for us, like, Ianto's death wasn't, or Ianto as a character wasn't, didn't have the impact I think he had on a lot of other people. So maybe, like, if you watch this by itself, you think that they have this history with Ianto and that he... Or maybe this is why. Maybe it's like people watched this as it was coming out, so it was years between seasons, and they kind of had the time to reflect on who Ianto was and kind of, fill in the blanks that, like, time... fill in the holes, I guess, that time pokes in your sort of memory and remember the characters differently. Whereas we just watch this straight through and we're like, yeah, Ianto wasn't all that.
Right.
But yeah, maybe if you just watch this in isolation, you would empathize more with like the character's emotions in the show rather than your own experience with the character of Ianto.
Right. It's possible we were weighed down by our preconceived notions of Ianto and all the characters as a whole, in fact.
Yeah, maybe we now care less about like Gwen and Jack just because of our dumb like segments on them committing sins and like not being affected by anything around them.
I mean,
probably not.
Maybe
but, like, maybe
partially we care about them a little less because we've realized how little they actually care about the things that happen to them.
Maybe. Freaking Gwen.
Well, the show like presents it in a very like slapdash, if you don't think too much, you move right past it kind of thing. But when you really start to like analyze the characters, you realize, yeah, like Gwen really isn't affected by any of the things that happen, even though she claims to want to make Torchwood care more about the common man, so to speak. And we even talked about this at the end of season 2, how like it seemed like Torchwood had changed Gwen more than Gwen had changed Torchwood by the end of season 2.
Yeah, I mean, hell, we talked about it, half an hour ago, where it's like the only times that Gwen and Tosh talked to each other was when Gwen told her that she's never gonna, like, get with Owen, and then the next time she's, like, very dismissive about, like, her getting married or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Yeah, never heard of again.
Or no, what was it? It wasn't Tosh being dismissive about Gwen getting married. It was Gwen. Wow, a double whammy for Gwen. It was Gwen, like, not care. I forget exactly what it was, but you remember what I'm talking about, right? They were in that room, and Tosh was trying to tell something to Gwen, and Gwen was just like, was not listening or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what it was.
There's also Tosh, like, there's also the Tosh just being okay with Gwen's, like, affair with Owen, which we haven't forgotten.
No, yeah. Yeah, man, when you put it in that light, man, Tosh could have been just, like, the pettiest person and just told Reese. And she didn't even have to out herself in it either. She could have just, like, she had control. Torchwood had surveillance networks that she had control of. I'm sure she could have, manipulated that to, like, somehow get Reese to realize.
Right. Yeah.
But she didn't. Man, just as time goes by, Tosh is really just the hero that we needed and didn't deserve. Ignoring the whole thing about her, bringing hostile aliens into the base and, just also being kind of a weirdo around people.
And selling out Torchwood on a few occasions.
Yeah.
Minus all of that, I guess. Yeah, minus all of that, she was all right.
Regardless, I really liked Children of Earth. It was a lightning in the bottle moment. I don't expect Series 4 to recapture anything that this did, and I hope that future me doesn't hold it to the same standards.
Well, only you have the power to prevent forest fires.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll recapture lightning in a bottle either, but I think it still has the potential to be good, so we'll see next week already.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This is, like, not really related, but I kind of think we need to end the episode on this note. I don't think I can just save this for a random quip at the end. The TARDIS Wiki, deep dive that it is, lists Torchwood Series 5. And I was like, that's interesting. I just did this right now. I was like, that's interesting. Maybe they have a page on it and like, yes, Torchwood Series 5 is a series that many people have wanted to happen for many years. No, you click on it and you go to Aliens Among Us was the 5th series of Torchwood released by Big Finish in 2017 and 2018.
Yeah, didn't I literally mention this like last week or the week before where I was like, Russell T said that the box set that Big Finish released was like canonically Series 5.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, rubs me the wrong way. Rubs me the wrong way that Series 5 or what they're positing as Series 5 is in audio. It just seems like a different continuum. And they even have Series 6 here as well.
Yeah, they've got a Series 6. And at the end of Series 6, spoilers, Gwen leaves Torchwood.
Wow. Well, speaking of Gwen, we didn't do our segment on her, a.k.a. her sins.
Her 7 deadly sins of Gwen. Well, what did she commit this week?
I didn't really think of this beforehand. I would say maybe lust. Like at the end, her scene at the end seemed to kind of hint that, like, it seemed to kind of recall, when she definitely had a thing for Jack. So maybe, I don't know.
Was Ianto the only Torchwood guy she didn't have a thing for?
I guess. I mean, there was only 2 other ones, which were Jack and Owen. So yeah.
Wow. Gwen. She kind of commits wrath throughout this episode towards the government, towards her unborn baby. Abortion is a sin, according to diehard right-wing
how could we forget
American politicians.
I'm sure that, like, people read Children of Earth thanks to this episode as like some sort of anti-abortion thing, which I don't think it is. But like, I'm sure there are people out there who do, Yeah,
I don't even know if we mentioned that she decides to keep the baby by the end. I don't think we actually said that.
No.
I think we just said that she tells Reese she wants to get rid of it.
Yeah, but at the end you do see she's like 6 to 7 months pregnant at the end, so.
Right. Good old, I don't know. Just good old whatever. So Jack, how much is Jack going to be affected? Well, if Jack is a regular person, I think a freaking lot.
Yeah, I mean, in this episode more than any other, you see, like, I guess, the pain that he has gone through, which I guess doesn't justify him killing his grandson, but, yeah.
No, but this episode really does like dive into the like mathematics of human lives because Johnson even is like it's one life versus billions or millions if we give in to their demands.
Right. Yeah,
and like I think that's the argument that actually sways Jack towards going through with it because I think before that he says like I'll find another way, and then Johnson's like it's one life versus millions.
Yeah, and that's something the Doctor has had to contend with too, and Doctor Who show that it is always gave the Doctor a way out, or always gave the Doctor a way out, but Jack doesn't have a way out.
Yeah, we even talked about this when we talked about how different Torchwood is from the Doctor Who. That like you said, Doctor Who always gives the Doctor a way out, no matter how contrived or like how sci-fi, techno-babbly it is. The Doctor always has a way out. But for Jack, there isn't. The only way out Jack has is to kill his own grandson, and that's it. That's all that they can come up with. Yikes. Yeah, I mean, we see Jack leave, so presumably this affects him a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't even know how he's dealing with this, because he says he's gone on this journey, but the planet's too small, so he has to go travel the cosmos or whatever. We don't even really know what he's done. Did he just go on this journey? Did he just reflect, or like, what is he doing? Anything to atone? Like, does that even matter? Like, does atonement even matter? Like, even if he is going around doing good deeds, does it change what he did? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, it's also it's going to be interesting to see if they dive into this in season 4 with him being a 700-year-old man who has had blood on his hands dozens of times before. Does this count for more or less than everything else he's done? And I don't know the answer to that, or if there even is an answer presented in this story.
Maybe this will be like Abaddon and Grey, and they'll never talk about it.
Look, no, well, Grey's dead. Like, Grey was put into cryo storage in the Torchwood hub that gets blown to smithereens in the first episode of this season. Like, he's dead. I know, but
like they still, I mean, obviously, Children of Earth doesn't really even give anyone time to breathe, so they're obviously not going to bring up Grey. But like, it's just he was forgotten. I guess narratively, like,
yeah, they there isn't ever a moment where they sit down and go, oh, Jack, like your brother died when Torchwood got blown up, and he goes, no, like we never get that.
And crying over your grandson that you didn't care about, yet your brother, who we were led to believe you spent years looking for, just gets nothing. What is that, Jack? I'm kidding, obviously.
Are you, though? Are you?
Well, the government doesn't really even try to screw over Torchwood this week. They just literally say, like, guys, like, you can't do anything you do is going to be pointless.
Anything you do will just bring about the destruction of the world a little quicker than
we are. Than before. Yeah, anything you can do, we can do better.
Yeah, so in that sense, the government screws over Torchwood by destroying the world first. And more successfully. So, I guess we'll see. Guess we'll see.
Yep.
Emails. I've got an email from Sergeant Drano. Torchwood Children of Earth Day 5. This is how it ends. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Lots of whimpering from a bunch of kids being snatched away. This is the episode where we finally learn the ultimate awful truth of why the 456 want all those children. They want them, quote, for the hit, unquote. That's right, the 456 love to vape children because children are the only thing more addictive than 6% nicotine. You see, the children make chemicals. The chemicals are good. The chemicals make us feel good, but you understand that is off the record. I enjoyed the little scenes of Colonel Augustus Aduye of Unit confronting the 456, solid little character. Wouldn't mind seeing him come back. I love the scene where the PM calls Frobisher into his office to inform him that his children are to be handed over, and how he closes with, "I'm really very sorry, and I'm really very busy." Damn. And the intercut scenes of Spears talking about Frobisher as Frobisher goes home to his family for the last time. Powerful stuff, and a powerful exit for Capaldi. I still think his performance here might be even better than his performance as Doctor Who. Your thoughts?
It is.
It was good seeing Andy again, and great seeing the conflict in the character as he sees those soldiers hauling away children, and he is torn between his duty to the state and his moral obligation to take a stand, even if it might be a futile one. Nice little face turn by the Black Ops guys getting Jack and Kevin Lannister to that warehouse to find a solution. Interesting that the breakthrough is ultimately made not by Jack, not by Decker, not by some scientist, but instead by Black Ops lady, realizing how the 456 was connected to Clem. And now the final icing on the cake, as Jack slowly microwaves his own grandson to death in order to defeat the 456. Well done, Jack. Jack Harkness getting it done. I just made a face. Beautiful reveal with Spears using the I5 lenses to bring the PM to justice, though maybe a little bittersweet with the implication of that other woman taking power in his place when she was the one that came up with the, quote, final solution, unquote, of giving the 456 all of the dumb, useless, lower-class kids. And a bittersweet final scene as well, with Jack's solution to everything he has done being to simply run away from it all. Not very heroic, but I think very in character for Jack. Nice call-outs to all the people Torchwood has lost so far. Do you see yet why I think of this show as the Blake 7 of Doctor Who? And just like Blake 7, you're about to get a somewhat contentious season 4, so get ready. I love Torchwood, and I don't hate the 4th season, but I think this was nearly the perfect way to end the series, Bridge on the River Kwai style. It's tragedy, but somehow it feels right that it's a tragedy. Very much looking forward to your podcast. Yours truly, Sergeant Drano, Station 7, The Door. Yeah, I have multiple notes throughout my watch-through of this that are like, Russell, please. Russell, give us some sort of optimism, please. Russell T, give us something hopeful, please. And he doesn't really, actually, like, we didn't talk about this, but by the end of the episode, you have, like, no hope left. There's almost nothing optimistic in this episode.
Yeah, it's not even a bait and switch either. It's, like, literally beginning to end. It's just bleak. And the whole thing at the end, too, where Gwen is like, you really want to bring a child into this, like, world that has, like, no hope and is filled with, like, all these awful things and awful people. And at the end, like, that's exactly what they decide to do. Like, and you know, you get very clearly, like, things aren't changing, right? What's her name? As Sergeant Drano mentioned, the
Denise.
other woman, yeah, Denise, is, you know, implied to now, you know, climb the ladder because of what she did. So
yeah,
just highlighting, just honing in on this sort of one thing to kind of, I guess, illustrate this larger cycle of, like, you know, things aren't really changing.
And that even if the people change, the actions don't. Especially with the Denise thing, is like, if Denise takes over, like we said, she's the one who proposed the whole plan in the first place, so nothing's really going to change, even though it's a different person. I also actually have an email. I don't know if you have any comments on Twitter, but I have an email about Revolution of the Daleks from Steven that I forgot to read out the past couple of weeks.
No, yeah, there's no comments on Facebook this week or Twitter.
All right, may as well read this email then. ROTD. Hey guys, Revolution of the Daleks was pretty much as good as I usually expect from a Dalek story or a special between seasons. Not mind-blowing, but some nice moments here and there. My prediction that the space prison was Miss Shada was dashed right away, but I also forgot about that prediction as I was watching the special. As someone who was annoyed by how flirtatious Jack used to be, I appreciate that Chris Chibi allowed it to be dialed back a lot here. Thought the Gwen mention was a nice touch. His talk with Yaz was good, but I feel like someone watching that talk and not being familiar with Doctor Who would think that the relationship between Jack and the Doctor was deeper than it actually was. Ryan's talk with the Doctor was good since it shows that the effects of the Timeless Children revelation have not gone away easily. My friend suspects that this is the scene that was added to the special after the fact. Not sure if it's been confirmed, and I'm too lazy to look it up. I did think that the write-out for Graham as a result of Ryan leaving was half heartwarming and half cringeworthy. It seemed very silly having Graham help Ryan learn to ride a bike. However, I did think it was hilarious that we got that faraway shot where Ryan falls off the bike again right before it cuts to the credits.
Wow. I don't think I noticed that.
Also, how funny would it be if Ryan only wanted to leave so he'd have the place to himself and he knows he can't go back on that now? Like, what if that was the main reason for him leaving and now he can't change his mind because he'd look like a jerk? Anyway, glad to have some Who in the new year. I actually got Masterful, a Big Finish multi-master story that came out January 2nd, the 50th anniversary of the Master's debut. Also looking forward to hearing more of you guys. Happy New Year and happy 7 years of the podcast. Cheers, Stephen. In the middle, he mentions a scene that was added after the fact. That's because after the special was filmed before quarantine and all the COVID stuff happened, and sometime in the middle, they did some pickup shoots, and apparently someone working on the show said that they added a scene to the special that wasn't in the original draft or cut of the special, but no one knows what scene or where. And I've seen other people too theorize that the scene between Ryan and the Doctor is the scene that was added later on. Because it seems very weird that there are no other characters there, and it just seems weirdly placed in the episode, even though it's a very heartwarming scene.
Yeah, they're behind them, right? Like they're standing behind them.
I don't think they're even in the shot.
No, they're not in the. They're not in the shot, but it's like that's how it kind of delivered to you. That like they're supposed to be like standing behind them or something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I have no idea. I'm trying to look it up now. I see a lot of information about that, but yeah, I don't think anybody really knows what scene it is.
So, very interesting. And, now that you've pointed out that I'm just processing, it's 7 years we've been doing this podcast. Blake 7 had its 7. We've got our 7. So we should just end it at 7. 7's a good number to end on.
Yeah, but like Blake 7, when we end, we have to kill ourselves off.
Oh, wow, okay. Wouldn't it be really funny if we just, didn't release an episode for next week? Just we're like, yeah. We just actually ended it there. But no, we'll be back next week with Season 4 of Torchwood. We'll be back. And, if anybody else would like to reach out to us to talk about Doctor Who-related things or Torchwood, you can reach us at thedoctor@kittyvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters. Thank you to everybody who reached out. Stephen, Sergeant Trano, and everybody else has reached out in the 7 years we've been doing this damn thing. Met a lot of really cool people doing the podcast, though. I'm going to be honest. Met a lot of really cool people I wouldn't have otherwise met. You can find us on YouTube at Decade of Vegetable. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you find our podcasts at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're starting Torchwood Series 4 with the New World. But until then, the end.